Good evening, everybody. We left off on page 310. Neil had changed from his black golf shirt to something cleaner. The autumn weather was not only rainy, but also cold. He slipped a sweater over his new shirt and rolled up the sleeves. When Kerry arrived, the FBI agent guarding the door let her in. She was soaking wet, without a raincoat, and looked miserable. "Lady Kerry, perfect weather for a stroll along the beach, wouldn't you say?" Neil said in a sarcastic British accent, trying to cheer her up. She chuckled cynically. He sounded far too much like Connor just then. "Right," she said, looking at him as she took her sport jacket off and hung up the dripping piece of clothing on a hook near the door. "I'm going to go take a shower, and when I get back down here, I want to hear an explanation, Neil." "You'll get it," he assured her. "Officer Reed went home?" "The FBI's pretty much got this covered," he said, glancing at the two agents strategically positioned on the downstairs. There was one upstairs and a couple outside. There was also surveillance from blocks away, and every so often, a black unmarked car passed the front of the house on LaGrange Road. "I can see that," Kerry said. "Where are they going to sleep?" "You aren't obligated to come up with anything, food or shelter. They're switching guard at night, so no one but us and Mum and Dad are sleeping here." She smiled slightly. "I might actually sleep here tonight, so I'll take the master, but if I sleep at the hospital, you can—" "I'm already sleeping on the floor. I gave my bed to Mum and Dad." "Take the other guest room, Neil." He raised an eyebrow. "What other guest room?" "The one in the basement." She stretched her back and heard it crack. "You need a back patch." "All right, for God's sake, I'll put the damn thing on," Kerry said irritably, and proceeded to the medicine cabinet in the kitchen. Neil was taken aback from her reaction. He hadn't brought up the subject before. She applied the back patch, and it immediately offered soothing relief to Kerry's aching, stressed body. She could feel the cartilage and muscles self-correcting as the nanites were absorbed into the skin. She straightened her stance slightly as well. Neil decided not to ask why she was so irritable about it. Instead, he said, "The kids are upstairs, playing Monopoly in the playroom. I don't think they heard you come in over all this rain." He had to elevate his voice for the last sentence because of an enormous clap of thunder. "Probably not," she agreed. "I'll go greet them and then take a shower. And then we talk." He nodded in agreement and watched her walk up the stairs. He turned and went into the family room to watch the TV. 15 minutes later, Kerry walked down the stairs with her hair combed, but still wet, and a long-sleeved blue t-shirt tucked into jeans. Though she was going back to work, it appeared comfort was now a priority over the professionalism a suit offered. "The kids are still playing. They wanted to come down, but I told them they couldn't. It'll take them a while to finish. Aiden's ahead by $300. "Still counting his money every time he passes go?" Kerry nodded with a smile. "And he's always the little DC-10 airplane. Patrick takes the FA-22 every time." "And you always take the glider, so you can't say anything," Neil said with a grin. The flight Monopoly game was a great investment on their parents' part. Seamus and Kathleen had purchased it 4 years ago for Christmas, and now every time they got together they played. Neil supposed it was because he was here that the boys thought to play the game. Kerry sat down on the lounge chair near Neil, and Neil turned off the television. "How's their waterproofing on the back patch?" he asked her. "Fine," she said, not wanting him to divert attention from the subject. "Explain to me how you went up against an armed assassin, alone, and came out without a scratch on you." "I had a gun," he said. She simply gave him a look in return, which dictated to Neil, "Tell me right now what the hell happened." Neil took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Okay," he began. "You might not believe this, but I swear I'm not lying. Agent Sourface on the back porch told me the house was secure, so there's no reason to lie." "Would you just tell me already?" Neil nodded and said, "Yeah. We went to the grocery store." He gave her every detail. He was quite used to recounting things like this to people, but not his sister, and not under these circumstances. When he was finished, he said, "Now I'd imagine you have questions." "When did you join the Special Forces?" "When I was doing basic training. They saw I was a pretty good shot, and so they put me in advanced, and I ended up getting through pretty high training." Kerry knew what he was saying was a vast understatement. They didn't just recruit people for the Special Forces because they were pretty good shots. Neil must have been amazing, but he was never one for boasting in a serious context. And after you got through this pretty high training, what did they do? Hand you a Special Forces ID and say they'd call you every now and then? Well, basically. It's a little more complicated than that. Most of what I've done is so top secret that I can't even tell my family. I had to tell Mom and Dad at one point, for the same reason why I have to tell you now. You just won't fall for one of the cover stories. And digging can get you hurt. My CO understands that. Of course, he's not going to let me tell Joe down at the post office because my mission schedule conflicts with our tea time. Your CO only lets you tell certain people, and only if you have to because of circumstances. When Neil nodded, Kerry soaked in the reality of what she was hearing. Her entire concept of her brother had been based on a lie. She had thought of him as an absent-minded but brilliant engineer for so long. She asked another question. Where have you been? What have you done? Or can't you say? I can't tell you where I've been or what I've done exactly. None of my missions are declassified yet. But I can tell you that I haven't been on one for the Navy anyway for the last 3 years. And that I really do work as an engineer. And always have. I haven't been on that many missions altogether. Nothing compared to some of the Special Forces guys. So they recruited you simply because you were good at it, but you still wanted to be an engineer, so they let you? She asked skeptically. I'm kind of a specialist. They're willing to let us do what we want to on off time, but only call us when they really need us. Again, another understatement. She let it slide. So Neil, how did you identify this man as an assassin? It's complicated, he said, not really wanting to get into the variables that went into a mental calculation like that. The way he walked, bulges in his clothing, his facial expression. Once he pulled his weapons, I noticed his style of shooting. I think he expended just one shot the entire time. An assassin won't take a shot unless he knows he can make it. Just like a sniper, Kerry said, suddenly feeling like their roles had reversed, and instead of her trying to explain foreign concepts to him, it was him trying to explain concepts to her. Right. But he didn't make it, she said, puzzled. Why did he miss? He didn't know who he was dealing with, he said. He wasn't boasting. He was telling the absolute truth. I mean, if he had known I knew what I was doing, his approach would have been completely different. He would have never walked into that store, for one. He would have just ambushed us from outside when we exited. I'm sure he's running his shoulda, woulda, couldas in his head as he receives medical treatment for his hand. From what you said, I'm sure he's lost a lot of blood. Neil nodded. I'd rather never have to shoot anyone, but in cases like this, I can't say I'm sorry. You shouldn't be. So there will be a hearing? I don't know how they're going to handle it. The fact that I'm in America makes it even more complicated. This isn't a mission, but I still can't blow my cover to everyone. You'll probably hear about the entire thing on the evening news, and hopefully you'll hear the story that the security guard shot the intruder, and that he was still coming at him, so I tackled him. Brave civilian and all that. Kerry nodded without a smile. Yeah, hopefully that'll be all it says. My CO will have someone's head if not. Kerry raised her eyebrows once, acknowledging the statement. It was still a lot to process. To think her baby brother, the brilliant aerospace engineer, actually knew what she was talking about all these years when she spoke to him about her job. Now she felt guilty, knowing she had taunted him jokingly and condescendingly spoken to him about his safety and ability to take care of himself. He clearly could take care of himself. The thought made her wonder exactly what kind of situations he had been in to have such a nonchalant reaction to this one. And it also disturbed her that he was such a good liar. I know I probably shouldn't ask you this for my own well-being, but how many times have you been in mortal danger? What, you're going to get competitive now and start keeping score? I think you might just win. Seriously, Neil. He thought about it. I don't know. Counting when I was little, running away from you? Neil. Oh, all right. Probably, he started counting. 10, 11 today? You're right, I do win. Told you. Do you regularly count? Have a document on your computer that tells you how many? She rolled her eyes. I'm just doing a rough estimate. Why? She shrugged. I was curious, okay? Yeah, fine, whatever. I don't care. Obviously you do, or you wouldn't be giving me a hard time. It was a question. An odd one. Anyway, she said, changing the subject before she actually did get angry with him. Have you had lunch? Yeah, the kids and I ate a little while ago. She nodded. Have you? No, not yet, she answered him. I'll grab something on the way back to the hospital and eat it there. That's allowed? I sure as hell hope so. I'm starving. I've got some micro-food in here. That's an idea. We'll sit and you can eat. We can talk, then you can head back over. When are you going back to work? Probably as soon as Connor's moved out of the ICU. Mom and Dad are going to stay with him. I suppose you and they can work out a schedule for rotating watching the kids? Why? Think they'll get sick of me? Not a chance. I was thinking the other way around. That and the fact that Mom and Dad want to see Connor and the kids. I imagine they brought presents for them. I don't know. They didn't have their luggage with them at the hospital. They probably did, Kerry said with a smile. It'll be nice for the kids. They need a distraction. Neil nodded in agreement. Oh, I almost forgot. When we got back home, this was on the door, he said, pulling a piece of paper out of his pocket. He handed it to Kerry. It's a delivery notice. Kerry read it and started to laugh. What? What is it? It's the clothes washer. It was supposed to come a few days ago, and they spelled our name wrong. How hard is it to spell O'Malley? I don't know, Kerry said with a smile. But anyway, Connor said they told him that they would deliver it sometime soon. And lo and behold, she flicked the piece of paper. Here we go. And they leave paper instead of an email. Neil, could you take care of this? Or have the FBI take care of it? We need a clothes washer. Poor Aiden's wearing Patrick's socks. Neil chuckled. Sure, you'll have your clothes washer by tomorrow, if I've got any say in it. It surprises me that Aiden's okay with wearing Patrick's socks. Seems like that would bug him. Kerry shrugged. Some things do, some things don't. He's not big on clothes. He likes everything to be light blue, but other than that, we never have any problems getting him to wear it, whatever Connor and I pick out. I suppose that's normal for a kid his age, Neil said. Though I think when I was that age, I wanted what my friends had. You were obsessed with basketball shoes. Why, I'll never know. You never played basketball, but that's all you would wear. You wore them with a suit to a wedding once. Whose wedding? Aunt Kelly. You remember? It was when Dad stuck his tie in the punch bowl during the reception. Neil laughed. Oh yeah! And then he asked me for mine. Somehow thinking it'd be long enough, Kerry continued. They both laughed, and Neil said, and then Mum pulled him aside and yanked it off of him. She was worried sick of what Grandma and Grandpa would say, seeing Dad with a little boy's tie on. They didn't even notice, Kerry said with a grin. Grandpa was too busy drinking Guinness, and I think Grandma was flirting with the DJ the entire time. They laughed again. That was a hilarious wedding, Neil said. Didn't you spend most of it studying in a corner? I had an exam the next day. Physics, I think. No, you took college-level physics in your senior year. Then it was chemistry. Yeah, I think that was it. I looked over your shoulder quite a lot. Didn't understand a word of it. You were 8. You didn't have to. But it looked like fun to me. It was fun, Kerry said honestly, though most of the class didn't agree. He chuckled. Most 15-year-olds have one thing and one thing only on their minds. Kerry smiled. He had never been like that. Not to her knowledge, anyway. He had always been intrigued by math, science, history, literature, but he had never been a partier. And she hadn't either. She thought she was going to be a pilot when she was a teenager, so she had geared all of her studying toward that goal. The brief nostalgic moment over, Kerry remembered her schedule. Let's go get some of that micro-food, she said, rising and walking over to the pod. Neil followed her. And we'll read more tomorrow.